Hello, welcome to the video for solving trig equations, part 2. Our essential question is how do we use factoring and trig identities to solve trig equations. And we're going to go ahead and jump into our first example. We have tangent of x minus 2 times tangent of x times sine of x is equal to 0. And our first step is going to be to use factoring. We're going to factor out tangent of x for both of our terms. So if we take the tangent of x out of both of the terms, tangent divided by tangent is 1, minus 2 tangent of x sine of x divided by tangent is 2 sine of x. Close our parentheses is equal to 0. Now that I have it factored, I can take each factor, set it equal to 0, and solve. So I'm taking tangent of x equals 0 and 1 minus 2 sine of x equals 0. And now I'm just going to figure out where is the tangent of x equal to 0. Well, remember that tangent of x is sine of x divided by cosine of x. And so basically I'm looking for where the sine of x is 0 and the cosine of x is 1 or negative 1. So on my unit circle, that location would be at 0, pi, because we have the ordered pair 0, 1, or actually 1, 0, my bad. And at pi, we have the ordered pair negative 1, 0. Remember, the cosine is the first value, sine is the second value. And then when we come back around again and we stop at 2 pi when we've completed our circle. So we have 3 locations where tan of x would be equal to 0. So we're going to have 3 solutions there, 0 pi, pi, and 2 pi. Then we continue on to the second part of our equation. 1 minus 2 sine of x is equal to 0. I'm going to subtract the 1 to both sides. So I get negative 2 sine of x equals negative 1. Now when I divide both sides by negative 2, I get sine of x is equal to positive 1/2. And now when I recall on my unit circle, sine is 1/2 at 2 locations at pi over 6. The sine value is the second number, which is 1/2, and at 5 pi over 6. Our second value of our ordered pair is 1/2. So we have 2 more solutions. X equals pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6. Let's go ahead and pause, copy this example down, and we will move on to the next example. Okay, second example. Sine squared x minus 5 sine x plus 4 is equal to 0. This one you'll notice that I have a sine squared, so I'm going to be factoring this using binomial factoring. So sine squared is sine times sine. 4 has factors of 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. And we need the pair that's going to add up to equal 5, so we're going to use the 1 and the 4. And because this sign is positive, that means that I have either 2 positives being multiplied or 2 negatives being multiplied. And because we need a negative 5 in the middle, we're going to choose the 2 negatives. So I now have it factored. Now I'm going to take each one of those factors and set it equal to 0. So first one, sine of x minus 1 is equal to 0. And the second one, sine of x minus 4 is equal to 0. Solving each one of those equations, I'm going to add 1 to both sides. Sine of x is equal to 1. So now I'm going to go look on my unit circle. Where is the sine of x equal to 1? So I'm looking for the second value of my ordered pair to be equal to 1. And I find that up here at pi over 2. Remember, 3 pi over 2 down here at the bottom doesn't work because that is 0, negative 1. And negative 1 is not the same as 1. So our first solution is x equals pi over 2. Now for the second one, we're going to add 4 to both sides. And we get sine of x equals 4. Well, remembering that sine of x is opposite over hypotenuse, basically if I rewrite that as a fraction, that would mean that the opposite side is bigger than the hypotenuse, which is impossible. So you cannot have sine of x is equal to a number bigger than 1, so this part has no solution. So our only solution to this equation is x equals pi over 2. Go ahead and pause, finish copying this example, and we'll move on to the last example. Okay, last example, 2 cosine squared x minus cosine x equals 1. First thing I'm going to do is move the 1 to the other side by subtracting it so that we can get our equation equal to 0. So we have 2 cosine squared x minus cosine x minus 1 equals 0. Next thing we're going to do is, let's go ahead and rainbow this. We're going to move the 2 to the end by multiplying it so that we get cosine squared x minus cosine x minus 1/2 equals 0. Not minus 1/2, forgive me, minus 2. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and factor this. Cosine squared is cosine times cosine. 2, we have one pair of possible factors, 1 times 2. Because we're subtracting, we know that we're going to have one positive and one negative. I need a negative in the middle, so the 2 needs to be negative, the 1 needs to be positive. And now we set each one of our factors equal to 0. And we finish solving it. So, for the first one, I'm going to subtract 1 to the other side. Cosine of x is equal to negative 1. On the second one, we're going to add 2 to both sides. Cosine of x is equal to 2. So where on our circle is cosine of x equal to negative 1? Over here at pi, where we have the ordered pair negative 1, 0. So x equals pi is our solution. For the second one, cosine of x equals 2 is not possible because we cannot have our adjacent side being longer than the hypotenuse, so we have no solution for that second part. So on this one, once again, we only have one solution. Go ahead and pause, finish copying your notes, and we will practice these more in class. Have a good day.